Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. So grateful to be home. So grateful to actually be here and to be able to have this live um to express to myself even, my thoughts and my feelings and my understandings, right? These truths for myself, these beliefs that I have, and to be able to come here every single day and to have these kind of discussions, and I know it's a small group, and I don't suspect that it will get super huge in that target audience that I would so love to help, right? I love helping everybody. I'm right, highly sensitive, right? Empathic, a little bit codependent, a little bit of my self-worth coming from other people, right? That we strive so hard to be accepted and to feel like we're belong, that we're one of the group, we're one of the gang, and quite often we'll overcompensate and we'll overcome ourselves and make ourselves do things that are uncomfortable or against our nature, right? A little bit of that chameleon to adapt ourselves to be a little bit more like that person that we would like to like us, right? I've done that my entire life. And one of the best lessons that I've been able to give myself was that understanding that that I could do for myself, that I didn't need to have that confidence, that courage, those understandings that I have reflected in anybody else's face, that I needed to be able to make movement even on that understanding that maybe nobody else will understand. And so I show up here every single day. And it's not in the hope of bumping into people that are similar to me, even though that would be amazing. But it's to kind of pick up people along the way who might have come up from one of those dynamic upbringings, who never really got to realize their true nature because maybe they adapted their personalities. They did it a little bit of that chameleon. They did a little bit of that codependency, that little, right? That little bit of stumbling over ourselves to accommodate others. And then after a while, we don't get to recognize our true selves, our true beings. I'm grateful for the lessons, right? No matter how they come to me, no matter when they come to me, because I entered this game, right, a little bit late in the season, but I've been treading water, and I do believe, just in the reflection of how things have changed in my life, right? That maybe that physical circumstance might not be the same, but that circumstances in my system is receiving it a little bit better. I'm not stumbling over myself to impress anybody or convince anybody, but I do realize in just showing up here every single day, that opportunity is there. And with that, there is that responsibility to maybe not misrepresent myself or misrepresent those other parts of me who have kind of graced my life in the process, and make it possible that I can show up here every single day. That I can have that understanding that possibly, right? I'm a little bit confused in the person that I should have been, or I should be, or I should be moving towards, that I've been putting that, should be putting that effort in, right? Because I am what I've been programmed in, right? That I've come to believe for myself. And I do believe that some of that programming is, right, permanent programming. And not to say it's all bad programming, because as I was actually saying this yesterday, that, I kind of looked at my family and realized how dynamic it was, how different it was, right? Some of these very strong personalities, right, that I had to adapt to, that I had to chameleon to, that I had to be hyper vigilant in, and also where I could just let myself go and just be with that absolute understanding that everything was going to be okay, that everything was dazzle and amaze, that everything was an adventure or an experience, that it kind of at the same time kind of confused it, where I might have been a little bit harder on myself, maybe, that I wouldn't have picked up on some of those lessons, even though I didn't realize them in the moment. Those experiences I had most definitely were lessons, and I am grateful that I had the is it stamina? No, it's not the stamina, but it is gumption, right? To look at those circumstances, to really look to see the damage that some of those relationships did, the strength and the courage and the independence that resulted from it, when in all reality, people having those experiences don't necessarily move into independence that way. They become very codependent. Not like I haven't been a codependent too. It's comfy, right? Being a codependent, because those things that you can't do in taking care of yourself, right? You hand that over to other people and you let other people take care of that, and in their weaknesses and in their gaps in their life, right? Being highly sensitive, we don't like to take without giving something back, right? And sometimes you can look at it like it's transactional, but truly, just having that idea that, if somebody gives something, that you do want to give something back, that kind of eliminates that idea that it might be transactional, because you want to, right? It's not like you have to. And I'm grateful for that lesson early in my life, right? You right, you get what you give. It was one of my dad's quotes. It's probably one that we heard consistently, maybe every day. My dad um, brought his kids up on inspirational and motivational quotes. My mother too, but I think my mother actually learned them from my father, and because my father wanted us to have a lot of these quotes actually be part of our beliefs and a part of our movement, right? Part of our values. So I give that credit to my dad 100%. But it was something I had to believe in, right? Because on one end, right, it was quotes to live by, quotes that we heard every single day. And my mother would, right, it was the way it was presented. It was where it was presented, where you could want to sit and have a conversation and really go deep, or you could be, oh, right, because somebody is shoving those ideas, right, or beating those ideas into your head. And then at that point, how willing are you to receive, right? You're not willing to receive, but sometimes you've got to take it. But those moments that you've taken, as soon as those moments are over, right, you're not taking it anymore, and they become something that's not even recognized in our lives. And again, that balance, right? And I am grateful that I learned early that I was going to have to be my own cheerleader, right? That I was going to have to be my own best friend. That I realized that through my dynamic upbringing, I had become dynamic myself, right? But I didn't realize that dynamic was a positive attribute. You know what I mean? I didn't look at it like that. I looked at it as different, as uncomfortable, as creepy, as insignificant, as useless as, right? You could put all kinds of labels on it because I heard all those labels my entire life, and right, and we munch on these things, and even though, right, I knew for myself, it's right, it's kind of that idea of sticks and stones, but words do hurt, and they did hurt me because, again, that was that idea of um, stumbling over ourselves to accommodate and mirror other people so we could be a little bit more acceptable. That was the goal, just to be acceptable, not to be welcomed, not to belong, but just to be tolerated, right? And that's a sad way to be thinking when you're, right, moving forward physically in time, in your age, and you're growing up. And it makes sense that I would have gotten stuck in that. But it's not that the lessons weren't there, but sometimes some lessons are stronger than others, and then sometimes when you're a little bit disillusioned, it's hard to think positively. It's hard to think that you have good traits, or maybe some of those things you've been hearing all your life was just somebody who saw those beautiful traits in you and decided to bring you down to their level, or, right, to make it so that you never achieve the next level because you're always in that state, right? And well, I think that was a little bit what happened with me, and I have to be compassionate for that circumstance. I have to appreciate that, I'm not the only one, right, who stumbles into these situations, that through our own need to belong, our own need to be accepted, our own need to even be tolerated, our value, right, as highly sensitives, as empathic, right, as codependents, because you would have to have those other traits in order to be codependent, right? That's that lack of courage, that lack of ability to stand on your own 2 feet, right? Because we're always putting ourselves, that's why we're so good at putting ourselves in other people's shoes, because that's how we adapted. What are they going to think? Oh, well, let's get in their shoes, right? So that we know when they're going to blow, right? Or we're going to know when they're displeased with something. Or the other way around, where we're going to appreciate when we see in their face that they're pleased with something, right? That's that feeling. And if I'm blinking, that's because I think I've got the beginning of a sty. I've only had one sty in my entire life, but I do remember got all red behind my eye, and it kind of reminds me. It was the first thing I woke up this morning, and it says, right. But I'm thinking, if it's not a sty, I scratched myself in my sleep, or my cat did something in the sleep. But over the course of the day and after my day at work, that's why we're so late this evening, right? That it is feeling more like a sty, and we'll see how it goes. I might put a warm compress on it just in case it's ingrown eyelash or something. I don't know, but and also because I keep rubbing the eye too and trying to feel for the sty, because it usually is a little bump and I don't feel anything, that I'm making it all go red and closing up on myself, right? So after a good night's sleep, I'll check it out in the morning. I'll give myself a warm compress to see if it brings anything to the surface. If not, well, we'll just wait and see what happens with that, right? But again, so today is Friday and we are talking about that compassion for ourselves, and we've been talking about compassion for ourselves the whole week. And compassion for ourselves has been coming in across my path in the little conversations, the little, not adventures, but experiences that I'm having in my day to day, and in the topics that I take in. Right, I take in a lot of content, and right this, and I understand if I'm talking about it, right, that maybe it might be suggested to me, but it was something I noticed, but I was very surprised that compassion for this week, we pretty much stuck on the compassion for ourselves. And I think, right, we are not taking ourselves into consideration enough. And I feel that I am. Right. I have goals, I have ambitions, but sometimes we think we have to, right? And we shouldn't do things, right, just because we have to. You really want to, whether your boss is asking you to do something, you want to help your boss. You want to make her look good, right? Right? Or make him look good. You want to do a good job. You want to get along with everybody, right? But you have to do it in a genuine way, not in a way that it makes you feel like you have to, or right, that that we spend too much time worrying about what other people think. And I think, we beat ourselves up. And I know with myself, my steering wheel is the guilt and the shame. And it's the silliest things that these feelings come to the surface. Like, you know, somebody makes a mistake and says something to me, and I know in my head that that's not true, right? I know it in my head. And yet I can find myself apologizing or accepting it as a fact, or not making it a point to course correct somebody in, because I'm not a big fan of turn the other cheek, right? I like things to be proper. I like things to be kind. I like things, right, and I think that's my prerogative, because this is my boundaries, right? When I say this, these are my boundaries, these are my values. And because, right, I love people, and right, I want to work with light in the darknesses, and I want to work with the highly sensitives, and the empaths, and I want to work with the entrepreneurs that are having such a hard time, right? Starting their business, but they so desperately need to work for themselves, because I know how difficult it is to work for other people, right? Well, maybe it's a little bit different for everybody, but I know for myself, having that independent nature and being a little bit hyper vigilant and wanting to control my surroundings, that quite often, right, that I find those positions where I'm able to express myself in that. Well, it's not a matter of knowing better, because in truth it's just a matter calling the shots, so that, right, so that we're comfortable, we're feeling safe, we're able to make the situation bearable for ourselves. So again, talking about that again, and that wasn't my intent, but that's that idea that we can have to accept ourselves for the moment that we're in, right? That, quite often we feel bad, quite often that guilt and shame surfaces. And for me, that's an indicator that, right, something's still that's still not cleared, or I'm still handing over my power, or I'm still uh, letting old programming dictate, right, somebody's else's idea of right and wrong when I perfectly have my own sense of what's right and wrong, right? For myself. And I think because these are my boundaries, that I have every right, because they're not unreasonable boundaries. They're right. You don't yell at people on the norm, right? I'm not gonna be around people, mind you. I do, right? And some of these people who are naturally yellers, right? My boss is back, so happy. And she's a yeller, right? She'll tear you a new one if you're not doing things properly. And in the beginning, when I first started my job, oh, she's scared to poop out of me, right? Be bawling my eyes out all the time. But the thing is, right? I'm looking at people differently now, and I understand that surface. And there's a difference when you see things not going the way that they're supposed to, right? That's why she's boss, because she's working her surroundings that suits her comfortable, and she has every right to surround herself with a team, right? That will do exactly that, because she's boss. That's her prerogative, right? But at the same time, you don't make people different, and you don't make people move and do things that they're not comfortable or they're afraid to do, or it goes against their values, right? And if you are doing that, that it's then that person's choice to say, hey, no, that isn't going to work, right? You can't treat me that way. You can't talk to me that way. This is just an analogy. Nothing like this is going on or anything, but just an analogy, right? Because you accepted those terms. And so, because you're in her world or his world, right? His surroundings, that you have no choice at that point if you're going to be in his surroundings and in his world or her world, right? That you're going to have to mirror what's going to make them comfortable, right? And I would have to say I still do that, but I do that out of respect when, right? That if somebody knows better than me, then I have no qualm about taking direction, right? But in that, well, getting back to the compassion, that compassion for myself, right? Not to let others Mexican hat dance on me, right? Not to let people dictate to me those things that aren't part of me. And if they are dictating to me and they are boss, that's their world, then you have to make that choice, right? Are you going to stay? Are you going to accept? Are you going to adapt and conquer, right? Are you still going to be comfortable? You're going to still feel happy in what you're doing if you have to accommodate them? Or is it time to move somewheres else where you do have a little bit more stretch to be that person where you want to be? Or maybe it's just in a promotion, right? That you could up your way up, that you could be more on a peer level rather than somebody, right? But to each one of us, we have to decide, right? And that idea that we don't give ourselves enough credit, we don't give ourselves enough consideration, sometimes we don't give ourselves any, right? And then all we do is go home and with our miserable attitudes and talk about our miserable jobs, right? Right? I whistle while I work, and not every day is easy, but I work with people I respect. I work with people who respect me. I have customers that I love, that I get to practice my craft with, right? And I work in a job that does allow me to practice my craft. And I see that movement in myself, and I see that movement in the people I work with and the people I take care of as customers too. And that's my little drummer girl give back, and we give back the best we can. And I am optimistic that there are moments that I will be able to give back and have given back and will continue to give back in different ways, right? You guys, it's Friday, and we covered this topic of compassion, but we spent the whole week on it, on compassion for ourselves. And I think that when things aren't going well, especially when things aren't going well, when we don't have those answers, we will quite often attach ourselves to people that we think might have those answers. Think, that's the word, right? And we don't actually really feel out the situations or even feel out ourselves to see what we're okay with. We don't even give ourselves any consideration. We just want to, right? Just keep moving, just get through it, because the bad isn't going to stay bad forever. Eventually, it's going to widen open, right? But sometimes we have to slow down. Sometimes we, right? When we have those situations where we have to move in other people's worlds, that we can set some boundaries for ourselves, and right, and be able to make those difficult choices when need be, right? Because it's only an indicator, if it's not feeling good, right, that somebody's crossed our boundaries. Even we've allowed ourselves to have our boundaries crossed. Sometimes we'll just go ahead and do it before anybody does it anyway. Oh, I've been guilty of that myself, right? But in doing baby steps, right, you can do little kindnesses for yourself constantly. I constantly have been taking myself into consideration, right? And maybe it seems a little bit selfish, but I do believe it's needed in this moment right now, right? That sometimes that we overextend ourselves, right? Sometimes we leave those walls wide, right? Just let those walls crash, or let people crash through those walls and, right, stress us out, frazzle us out, and we let that happen. Sometimes we just don't have anything left, and we still try to show up, don't we? We still try to show up, and that's not very compassionate. That's not very considerate to ourselves, right? Because we're trying to give away everything, everything, and there's nothing left for us. And how do you make a life out of that? How do you make a living out of that? How do you build in a relationship, right? Right? Because that's how we end up in those, um, what do you call that? One-sided relationships, because somebody is always a giver, right? And so we want to make sure that we align ourselves with people who also give, right? But giving and giving means that we also have to be willing to receive. So, in that bit of compassion for ourselves, maybe that message is, right, especially if you're moving towards working with other people or building on friendships or the relationships that have been a little bit hurt, right? A little bit neglected, right? Sometimes we get preoccupied in what we're doing, but we can't beat ourselves up about that, right? Because it works two ways, and we fail to recognize that when we stumble, right? That sometimes that we'll take that blame, we'll take that fault ourselves when we played such a small part in it, if not no part in it at all. But we're, right, so happy to stumble over ourselves for a little bit of conversation, a little bit of company, a little bit of understanding, right? A little bit of compassion, right? A little bit of compassion. Ah, I think for that, I never truly sought out compassion. That in that stubbornness and in those experiences, right? That maybe that's why this topic has been coming up all week. And it's not necessarily because I show up fresh like a loaf of bread. Maybe that was a lesson for myself. And if you're happening on to my content, right? Maybe that's a realization you're supposed to have too. But I'm having this realization right now, right? Like I noticed that we were talking about compassion for ourselves all week, like every single day when we got into that topic of discussion, right? We should have that compassion for others. And we do, but I felt that need, right, to really talk about that compassion or the lack of compassion that we have for ourselves. And that's something I have to take note of this week, especially in the way that um, things have worked out in my day to day. I really took note of how I was talking to myself, what I was thinking about myself. I was also looking at how I was looking for help or asking for help. And, I was kind of proud of myself that I actually searched out help because I'm somebody who will usually, right, die hard by myself right into the end until somebody offers me to help or has an answer to a question or a solution to whatever I'm working on, right? It's that little bit of lone wolf that some of us get, right? Just from that disillusion of, right, not feeling like we belong, right? Not feeling like we're welcomed. And that's the problem, right? We got nothing to give, right? We have no compassion for ourselves because, well, I'm not going to say, because if you can't drum that compassion up for yourself, more than likely you're not drumming up any compassion for anybody else because, you'll recognize that, right? You're trying to give something to somebody that you're not even getting yourself. And I think in that we were talking a little bit about Wayne Dyer and his quote that there is no justifiable reason for resentment. And this is the worry that I have with people, right? That they can become resentful because they'll see the different stages, right? But if you can show up, because even the greatest of the greats, right, have weaknesses. Everybody has handicaps. Some of them are financial, some of them are social, some of them mental, some of them are emotional, some of them are physical, and to different degrees too, right? So it would make sense. It would make sense that in our evolution that each one of us also would have it in different degrees depending on the experiences, right? The adventures, the programming, right? The influence, the manipulation, who we surround ourselves with. And lots of us, we like to think that we get to choose who we surround ourselves with. But sometimes the biggest problem is in with our immediate surroundings, right? And you have to be compassionate to yourself too, in understanding that you have to, right? Keep yourself safe, keep yourself comfortable. And if you recognize that those boundaries are being crossed, then we have to have that responsibility. We have to have that compassion for ourselves to make those difficult decisions, right? And Sometimes, especially when you're dealing with family, right? It most definitely has to be in baby steps. It was a process, right? It was a process to move away from what made me feel that idea and that mirroring and made me feel like I was stumbling over myself in overcompensating for the kindnesses or perceived kindnesses that were coming at me, right? And grateful, right? I wouldn't be sitting here right now without those kindnesses, but sometimes it's in the intent, right? And we'll leave that for another day. We're going to be back here on Monday with a new word on Monday. Tomorrow we'll be doing an angel card on Instagram. Sunday night will be my other live show, Chatters Live. If you want to join us, 7:30 Central PM. Come hang with us. We have an amazing crew over there. My moderators, yeah, more than I do, if you think that's possible. But in any case, I'm going to finish my coffee and I'm going to put that hot compress on my eye and then taking a couple of lessons, right? And then look for that Kodak because tomorrow, right, I want to start getting my video ready, all my clips and everything that I need for the next video all ready to go and already rendered so I can get back into editing, right? So you guys have a great night. Thank you for popping in. Thank you for the heart stare. I appreciate that. And for those of you who pop in later or tomorrow morning, right? Because it's already getting late now. I hope you have an amazing day. And for those of you who make it in tonight sometimes, right? Sometimes we get up in the middle of the night and what do? We come to check to see, right? Who's been on, right? What's to be said, what's to be learned and I hope you don't stick around for too long that you'll get super tired, right? And go right back to sleep. Right back to sleep. You guys, Nancy's here. Nancy! Oh my goodness. I could not believe your beautiful Halloween setup with your trains. Absolutely just gorgeous. Did you tear it down and then put it back together? Or was it still there and you hadn't taken apart yet? Like, absolutely, it was oh my goodness. Yeah, absolutely beautiful. I just love it. Oh, right? Perfect. Perfect. You'll never be able to do it. We'll have to get together and buy you a new ping pong table, right? You can use it as a craft table. You won't have any room in your house, right? Those things take up a lot of space. Oh, and look at, I bet you're smiling now, right? I bet you're smiling now. Okay, you guys, that's it for tonight. I'm going to put that compress on, finish my cup of coffee, and like I said, right, I got to be back at work at 9 o'clock in the morning, so I'll be up bright and early tomorrow, and I'll be back. Uh, Angel card, Instagram tomorrow. Okay, you guys, have a great night. Bye bye.